In today's episode, I want to talk about macro photography and I will share 11 of my tips. My tip number 1 is get yourself a proper macro lens. There's a few that claim to be macro, but they are not near as good as a real macro lens, and they are not so expensive. I got the Laowa. It's a manual focusing system, and I can also magnify in 2 times, so I can make very small intricate details large and make them appear larger on the sensor than it normally is. So that's a very nice thing when you shoot macro. So this lens is very versatile. It's great for fungus, insects and flowers, everything you can think of really. So yeah, that's the first most important thing. I've been doing macro photography before I got myself a macro objective, and some images came out decent, but I used 200 millimeters, so I had to stay so far from the subjects and crop in just a little, so it's not really the same. So my first subject of this day is these birds. That's what I call them, because they look like birds. And as you can see, they resemble a bird flying. And I found it in between the lichen, so I hope you like it. Tip number 2, I would say composition. It's still quite important in macro photography. Instead of shooting from above, looking down, I would suggest that you are getting along in the eye level of the subjects. That creates a more interesting look to your images. It creates more depth, so the background gets nicer. It's a nice bokeh, especially if you use a large aperture like f2.8, f4 and f5.6, for example. Depends on how much you want in focus and what you want in the image to get sharp. Just moving slightly to one side or another can dramatically change how the final result is. So it's very important that you pay attention to the background and how the depth is affecting the image. Tip number 3, I suggest you start using focus peaking. Most new cameras have that. And as you can see, when I manually focusing, it shows like red where I focus with my camera. So it's a very nice indicator on what you have sharp in your image. By having that focus peaking, you know exactly where you're focusing. So that's very nice. Number 4, I will say stabilization. It's a great deal when you're doing macro photography because the slightest camera shake affects both your image, the final result, and it's so difficult getting that focus because when you're magnifying in, it's also magnifying the shake. So it can feel a very frustrating every now and then, especially because I do handheld manual focusing. Without stabilization in the camera, I can't use it on my Laowa. But to combat that, I will suggest use a tripod or a rail where you can slightly increase the distance and you have more control over what's in focus. Because when you're shaking, you really have to rely on steady hands. You can also lay down flat on the ground and try to stabilize as good as possible, but still you have to focus. And I like to do that rocking forward and back, and yeah, I set my magnification first, in what degree I want, how close I want to be to the subject, and then I have to move to get the focus right. So yeah, stabilization is a very important deal doing macro photography. I'm out in the woodlands today because I chose a windy day to do macro photography, and in here it's a little bit calmer, especially down on the ground. I have this bad habit about forcing images sometimes. So I tell myself to be a little bit more critical to what I will spend my time on. But yeah, when you find everything interesting, it can be very challenging and difficult. Now we come to tip number 5, and I will talk about shutter speed, because that's so important, especially if you do it handheld. You want to make sure that your camera shake, or if it's a moving subject, that you freeze the action. So at least have one by 250 seconds, 1/250. I'm not really sure how to pronounce it, but a fast shutter speed really helps with getting that crisp and sharp images. If you have a tripod, I suggest you use a timer, like a 2-second timer or a 5-second timer, so you can press the button on your camera and it waits until it captures the image. And you can also buy remote shutter control that will not affect the camera and shake it up as much. Tripod, you can have longer shutter speeds depending if it's windy. It depends on the subject. If you're photographing flowers in the winds, you have to have the high shutter speed also. But if it's a mushroom and it's stationary, you can get along fine with slow shutter speeds. No deal at all. Just found another composition that I'm pleased with. I will call it the courtesy. Now it's 2 birds. It's really about these leafy things that's fallen down in this forest, looking like birds, and they get stuck everywhere. In this case, they are stuck on top of 2 mossy stems, and the one is kind of looking to the other while he's doing his mating dance. So yeah, here is the courtesy, captured with my layout on f4 aperture. So I framed up another bird, and I call this the takeoff. It's like almost like it's going to take off from the plant. Another ethereal kind of photography that I really like. So this is a great example of where I would want to have a tripod with me, but of course I left it home. So this scene I also use some lighting on the subjects, and since I don't have any, I use my mobile phone, the flashlight built in it. And it gives me some extra nice lighting on the scene here. Here is the final result of this shoot. My tip number 7 would be manual focusing. In that way you can have full control of your depth of field. And in my experience, when you are zooming in and out and control that depth of field, you can suddenly stumble upon a very nice composition. Having the front, the mid or the background sharp really changes the feeling in your images. So manual focusing, I think, is the best way. It's the very next day. I had to go out again to finish this video, and I found myself a very nice subject. We call them kitty paws. I call them that. I am manually focusing on my subjects here, so I can decide the depth of field that I want and what I want sharp of these flowers. And because of the rain, it's full of it's covered in droplets. Here is one example of me going in with 2 times magnification, and I need to get very close to the subjects. And when you manually focusing, I like to set my focus to twice the magnification, 1 to 1, and then I move my camera just slightly back and forth until I have what I need in focus. number 8 will be focus stacking. You should be using a tripod doing that. It's all about stacking multiple images together, and you control the depth of field. So you get the entire mushroom, for example, in focus from front to back with a large aperture like f4, 2.8 or something like that. So you get that nice, beautiful bouquet. And when you do that, you don't get the entire subjects in focus in one image. So you need to be stacking 20, 30 images in Photoshop or Luminar. I prefer Luminar. It's one click. You gather all the photos together and it does the rest for you. So now it's very easy. Before you had to do it in Photoshop and have some knowledge about it. Now it's for everyone to do. So yeah, focus stacking is very nice if you want to showcase the entirety of the subject. I'll give you tip number 9. Get yourself a polarizer filter in front of your macro lens. In that way you can get rid of that unwanted glare, that reflected light. And the funny thing is I don't have it either. And I always go out in midday usually, because that's when I have the possibility. And I photograph a lot in strong sunlight. So maybe I should invest in that too. But yeah, I managed to go around it. You can also have a diffuser in some ways, thin paper, something to cut out the direct sunlight at least. This is a very beautiful color. It's slightly vibrant greens, but they are faded compared to the green moss beside it. So it's very nice contrast between these two. And this small moss right in front of me, I found a little composition to be interesting. I just removed one distracting object on the right side of it. So now I'm focusing on that, and I put it dead center in the middle, and it's surrounded by this beautiful colored moss. And it looks like a baby that's laying in a cradle. A little break isn't bad either. I prefer to sit down and just have a little drink. My strawberry milk gets me energized for more work. I usually chug it down in one top tip. Wow. Tip number 10. I want to speak about creativity. And there's so many things you can do together with a macro lens. I see someone that used a mirror, placed it on the ground to have that canopy showing, and she put a subject on the mirror and focusing down on it. That creates a very ethereal, nice look, in my opinion. So that was a great tip, and I for sure want to try that myself. You can always try to come up with some kind of abstract images where you're not really sure about what you are watching. That can trigger a nice sensation, a feeling in someone. And as a tip number 10, I also include ICM, intentional camera movement. That can be so much fun to play around with your macro lens and do some intentional camera movement. When you set a little bit longer shutter speed and do a slight movement in your camera. Another interesting thing you can do with your macro is bringing a spray bottle. Spray your subject with some water droplets. So you can use a spray bottle, or you can do it like me. The lazy version is going out straight after rain. Then it's all full of droplets, most of the nature outside. It gets very interesting to look through a macro objective right after the rains. A little bonus tip, logs like this and fallen trees are often a very nice place to start looking for mushrooms because they thrive on this. But because of the dry summer there's nothing growing yet. So I have to wait until the rain starts to fall, and then I think it will explode in the woodlands. The winds are really picking up, but down here in the underneath the canopy it's pretty calm. So I choose wisely to go into the woodlands, but no mushroom. Macro photography can be done everywhere. I can even sit down exactly where I'm standing now. I could make an entire macro video just being home. Because my daughters bring me this bouquet of flowers, and they have decayed for about 6 months already, so they are marinating. And I've been thinking about creating some photo of it, and perhaps I will make a video just to show you that it can be done even at home. So yeah, macro is for everyone. If you have the slightest passion about nature and want to take a deep dive into the small details. Just stop to take a look at this trunk because there's growing some lichen and moss on it. And on the backside there's actually some animals living. I can see several holes inside here. It's interesting, but I'm not gonna disturb, and I think I will move on because it wasn't that pleasing, this moss. These are also a great subject to work with. Most photographers have tried capturing this exact plant. We are by the end of this video. I hope you learned something, or at least had a fun time watching it. I'm afraid I can repeat myself sometimes, and I forgot what number of tips I was on, so at least I shared my wisdom, what I know. So I hope you like it. Thank you so much for watching my videos. Please like, comment if there is anything you want to say to me. If I left out something, please let me know in the comment section. And until next time, out!